Let's kick off the World Football phone-in this morning. We usually have some music, don't we, at this time? Anybody up for any music? No? OK, we'll come back to that a bit later then.
Well, we've only got 4 hours. There's no time to
Only 4 hours. Tim Vickery, the Wikipedia, as ever. Tim, just very quickly, tell us what the big stories are from South America-wise that people might want to talk about.
Well, one is Ariel Ortega, who we often get emails and phone calls about, the nearly great ex-Argentine international, who now it looks like he's fallen off the wagon one time too many with his club River Plate. He has an alcohol problem. He's the coach there, River Plate, Diego Simeone, well known to English fans, is a hardliner, and I think he's just lost patience with him. So Ortega won't be playing for River Plate in the season of Argentina, which kicks off this weekend. They were going to send him to the Arab world, but I think for an alcoholic that's a little bit too dry. So he's decided that he wouldn't do that. So he's moved to a second division club, Independiente Rivadavia, in Mendoza, near the border with Chile. And he's also he's going to go do some rehab as well. So
and of course, Robinho won't be coming to Chelsea either.
Well, who knows?
Is that a surprise?
Well, let's wait and see with this one. I was up at the Brazil camp about 8 weeks ago, and when they were preparing for World Cup qualifiers, and you could see that he wasn't happy, and the reason that he wasn't happy was that it was abundantly clear to him that Real Madrid valued Cristiano Ronaldo much higher than they value him. So he has been agitating for a move. His agent has been agitating for a move. The reason that he's not at the Olympics, because he was selected by Brazil, he's kind of hiding behind Real Madrid. Real Madrid claimed he had an injury, but I kind of think that it's down to him more than down to Real Madrid, because if he was going to go to Chelsea, which I think he would very much like to do, it would obviously be attractive for Chelsea not to lose him to the Olympic Games. So this is a move that could still happen, I think.
And of course, that is a link between South America and Europe. Andy Brassel is our top brass in Lyon to take any questions or comments you might have on European football. Andy, Tim says the jury's still out on Robinho's move to Chelsea. What say you?
I'm not convinced he'll go. I think Real Madrid, especially in the light of not getting Cristiano Ronaldo, can't really afford to lose him. They'll make up whatever ground they've lost in their wholehearted pursuit of Ronaldo, and they'll hold on to him because they need to. I think at the end of it, he'll get a pay rise and everyone will be happy.
Fair enough. 0500 909 693. As you can see, our pundits don't always agree, but you're welcome to join in the phone in this morning with any questions or comments you might have. Text us on 85058 or email upallnight@bbc.co.uk. We've got a special guest with us. Ex-Derby manager Billy Davies joins us now. Billy, good morning.
Good morning.
And not a first time for you on the World Football phone. It's always a pleasure to have you. So what's the state of play as far as your career is concerned, first of all?
Well, obviously, I've said all along that it was very important to take the rest and take the break and spend the quality time with the family. That was very important to me after 6 years in England, and a wonderful time in England as well. And now it's all about a matter of time to get back in again, the right time with the right club and the right opportunity. And we'll see what comes up over the next few months.
Any ideas or any suggestions for us as to where you might be going?
Well, I'm very open-minded about it. I'm quite happy to look at any offer that comes in or any interested party. I'm quite willing to discuss with anyone that's got some ambition and is prepared to go and talk about football and talk about the club and what they want to do with it. So I'm very open-minded as to whether that's in Scotland, England or abroad. But as I said, I'm very refreshed and extremely looking forward to getting back in and getting started again. So
what's going through a manager's mind at this time of the year, just before the season starts, or literally hours before the season starts, if you're in the Championship or Division 1 and Division 2? It must be a very worrying time, I suppose, or anxious time, is that right?
Well, what it is, it's a great time of year because the expectation level right across the country is enormous at every single club, no matter what the spend has been so far during the transfer window. Every club will be prepared for this new season to start and looking forward to it. The fans and everyone at the club will be looking at the season with great expectation, and it's all about controlling that expectation at certain clubs, because there can only be one winner, and everyone will be preparing to go into this new season and hopefully do as best as they can.
Perhaps you could answer this one from Neil, a very worried Blue from Liverpool, because, of course, teams are running around trying to sign players that are still available at this hour. And he says, look, we're desperate to try and find someone for Everton to sign. Can you help at all? Who would you say that they would need?
Well, that's a question for David Moyes and his staff, obviously, to answer. I mean, what I would say to the caller is it's very early yet in this transfer window, and we just talked about Rubinho. Anything's still possible, and having been in that position over the last number of years, and knowing fine well that a lot of the transfers, big transfers, get done very late in the day, so there's still lots of time for many things to happen at all these different clubs. And Everton Football Club at this moment in time, in my opinion, already have an excellent squad. And I'm sure that David Moyes and the board and the staff there will know exactly what they need to bring in and when they need to bring them in.
Billy, I take your point. We've had several texts from Everton fans this morning. I don't know why, but this is from Gazdalf on the Wirral. He says, I wonder if you can give any information on any rumours flying around about potential transfers for Everton. Names are Moutinho, Mbia, Milito, is it? Veloso, and securing a permanent deal for Manuel Fernandes. Any information would be highly appreciated. I don't suppose you've got the insider information on that, have you?
Yeah, tell him it's a silly season, isn't it? It's a silly season for transfer talk, and there's lots of speculation, and as a manager especially, you have to deal with all this speculation that's going on in the press at the moment, and all the so-called names that's flying about, who's going to join and who's going to be sold, and it can be quite disturbing at football clubs when you have to come in every day, and there is all this speculation. But as I said before, great squad at Everton. I'm sure they'll go on and have another very good season under Moyes and his staff. And again, they will know exactly what they have to bring in, and they will know the timing of that. And
talking about the silly season, Tom seems to have some inside information. He says, ask Billy if there's a chance of him taking over a championship club within the next month if there happens to be a takeover at that club in the near future. Do you know which club he's talking about?
well, that could be any club in modern day football, couldn't it? I mean, because we see lots of overseas investors coming in and lots of things happening at different clubs. But as I said before, that I'm very much looking forward to the new season. I've watched with great interest of all the activity that's been going on in the different divisions of signing players and the speculation and everything else, and I think it'll be a real good season again in football.
Thanks for now. Billy Davies is joining us for the next hour. Hiral Bart is our African football expert. What's the big news from your side, Hiral?
I would say it's all about the Olympics at the moment. You know, Africa has done well at the Olympics in the past, and
why is that? Why does Africa do well in the Olympics but not as well in the World Cup?
Well, I think it's to do with the fact that it's a youth, ultimately a youth competition. I know you have some experienced players who play in three, but normally at youth level, African teams have always done well. I mean, we got Nigeria, the under-17 champions, under-20 champions. All African teams made it past the group stages, so they tend to do well at youth tournaments. The reason why that is, and maybe perhaps not at senior level, is I think largely to do with organisation. I think perhaps it affects them less at youth level, but it's one of those football phenomena which we would love to sort of explain, because that might help the senior teams make more progress at those international tournaments that they enter.
Is it so that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that a lot of the youth players maybe are hungrier for success in a way that the more senior players, after they've been playing in Europe, going back to their home countries, it doesn't have the same kudos about it, and perhaps they've been away from home for too long, because of course it's an export market from Africa, isn't it?
That's right. I think there's definitely an element in that. I mean, before the show, Tim and I were speaking about the Ivory Coast team, who, although they lost to Argentina, basically put on a very good show. And if you look at that team, apart from Gervais Kouassi, and Solomon Kalou, that team is missing a lot of the big names. I mean, you've got a lot of young talent there. I mean, Mohamed Bakayoko, the central defender, very well in the Toulon tournament last year. And, I mean, players like that, would definitely have an incentive to do well, because they'll be looking for those big money moves, the chance to express themselves on grander stages. So that element probably is there, for sure.
We've got a question for you from Lee in Newport. Good morning, Lee.
Hi. I just had a question for... by the way, Dotun, I absolutely love the show. I've only been listening for, say, a couple of months now.
I really appreciate it.
And,
it's a team effort, you know. It's 11-a-side team here in the studio tonight.
Oh, brilliant. I'm honoured to actually get on the show. It's I always listen every week, you know. I sort of, you know, leave a message to myself so I don't forget, you know.
That's the way to do it.
I'm really annoyed if I miss it. So, what it was that the last African Cup of Nations was on, and there was a player that played for, I think it's Trinidad. No, I can't remember now. I can't remember. He was signed for Man United.
Oh, yeah.
A young player. And he went.
I think we know who it is. Hiro.
Yeah. I think you're talking about Manucho, right? Of Angola, who.
Yeah, that was it. Angola. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Did he get on when he went on loan, and is he still going to be playing for Man United, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's done reasonably well at Panathinaikos, and
yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and it's one of those classic parking sort of scenarios whereby, you know, Manchester United have said, well, let's park him there and see how he does and bring him back. But I think Alex Ferguson rates him, and and I think the interesting thing about Manucho is he's coming straight from Petro Atletico, which is a big club in Angola, and you know, a big club in Africa. But he's going straight to Manchester United, champions of England, champions of Europe, and it's. I don't think that's. I can't ever remember that happening, you know, in sort of modern times before. So.
It's a big step.
Yeah, it is, and it's a real challenge for him. But what does the boy have? He has near enough everything. He's
quite tall, isn't he?
Yeah, he's about 6'5".
Yeah.
He's got one great outside shot, fantastic in the air. In fact, his headers were what sort of made everyone sort of stand up and take notice at the in the early stages of the African Nations Cup.
That's right. Yeah, I was really impressed. I was like, oh my God, you know, he was only 17, 18 maybe.
Well, he's a bit older than that. I think he's actually about 24, coming on 25.
I thought he was younger than that. But everything just gone really quiet, sort of thing. So I was just wondering what was happening, and you know, everyone on about, oh, let's get a new strikers in and whatever. And
yeah, I think it's something that would definitely be interesting. It would definitely be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
And I think with his all-round natural ability, he should acquit himself well. I mean, the question is, when will he play? You know, how much time will he get with all the stars ahead of him, especially now that Ronaldo is staying?
Yeah,
but I think you know, it's definitely an asset for Manchester United, and I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if he sort of stepped up and suddenly became one of the, you know, the more key figures this season. At the same time, sounds like I'm covering all angles, but
no, that's a fair point. I mean, you know, obviously with the squad and the team that they've got, it's just that, you know, you read about in the press and say, like on British teletext, you know, TV stuff, saying all the fans saying, look, when you buy Berbatov or when you buy David Villa or whoever, and he seems to be forgotten about. And he just really, like, whenever he got the ball, I was like, oh my God, this kid's really really exciting, you know. So
I definitely agree with you there. I think it's value for money, so to speak. Yes, definitely.
Lee, thanks a lot for the call. 0500 909 693 is our number if you'd like to join us talking world football right through till 5 o'clock. Pick up the phone and give us a call. Billy, a couple of text messages for you. From Paul, does Billy think Derby have a chance of promotion? Being a Derby fan, I thank Billy for what he did, although his comments after the play-off win leaves a sour taste. Remind us of those comments, Billy.
Well, everybody's allowed an opinion, aren't they? And you know, only when you know the facts do you really make comment on and know exactly what's going on. But I do think Derby have got a great opportunity this year because of obviously the parachute payment puts you in such a good position when you go back into the Championship and when you're competing again for the challenge of trying to get into the playoff or get promotion again. So I would expect Derby County to be there and thereabouts come the end of the season. And again, from my point of view, I certainly do hope they do very well this season because I had a wonderful time there, and I thank the fans and everybody at Derby County for what was a very successful and a very happy time.
Also from Nick in the Wirral, who are Billy's dark horse for League One to gain promotion?
Well, that's an interesting question because, as I said earlier, I've looked and watched with interest, and there's been a lot of transfers taking place, a lot of money being spent on good players. and you just look at a number of clubs right across the Championship League, it's going to be a very, very tough league again. Difficult one to call again. As I said, you would expect the ones with parachute payments to be there and thereabouts, but you know, there's a lot of big clubs in that Championship. It's a very difficult league, and you know, I'm certainly sitting on the fence here, but I do think there could be a number of people coming very much in position for pushing for the playoffs or getting promotion.
This one's a general one. Is Jimmy Bullard England material?
Very good player, great personality. I think, you know, there's nothing better than seeing a player play with a smile on his face, and that's what Jimmy does. He plays with a smile on his face, and he looks to be an excellent lad in and around the dressing room, which is always good as well at the club. But so, you know, he's proved time and time again, especially last season for Fulham, near the end of the season, when he came up with some very important goals and very important displays. And if he can continue to do that, then who knows what lies ahead for Jimmy.
Tim, Vickery is looking astounded when you don't know what it's like for a player to play with the smell on his face.
I thought he said smell first of all. It was the accent that threw me.
Okay,
Sorry,
right.
Billy.
A smile on his face. I saw your face light up, smell on his face.
I can obviously see the advantage against the defender. You know?
Sorry about that, Jeff. I'm trying to speak some English.
That's all right, mate. 0500 909 693. Join us for the phone in this morning. We're talking world football. Cleo in Aldershot, good morning.
Good morning, Dotun. Good morning, Tim. Good morning, Andy. A quick question for both of them. Andy, my team are playing FC20 on Wednesday in the Europe Champions League qualifying. Do you know much about the team? I know Mr. McLaren manages. Is there any players that my boss, Mr. Wenger, should watch out?
Well, actually, you should be asking him if your team are going to win, because they haven't been doing too well of late, have they?
They played a cracking match tonight in the Amsterdam tournament. They played Ajax, and they won 3-2.
I know.
They were 2-0 down.
You know I was only winding you up.
I know. And Charlton, unfortunately, lost against
I know. Sorry I couldn't get there.
Right,
sorry I couldn't.
That's all right. 2-0 they won.
Okay.
They only sorts of news. And for Tim, Argentina and Brazil have had good wins in the Olympic qualifying football matches, but Brazil struggled a bit. They didn't score till the 79th minute, and they played against a 9-man Belgian team. The busiest man on the pitch was the referee. I think about 8 bookings and 2 sendings off. What does he think of that?
Should we take Tim first of all and come to Andy then?
Well, debut. So you always want to get the debut out of the way with a win. Well, Argentina left it even later than Brazil for their winner. They scored with something like 5 minutes to go. Brazil, and the coach Dunga is saying that they have to improve in everything. That they weren't particularly impressive. They're clearly carrying Ronaldinho, who's nowhere near match fit yet. So the odd good ball, but apart from that, it was just free kicks really. And he got once to the byline from open play. And the Ronaldinho situation is quite interesting because I don't think really Dunga wanted him there. He was picked by the president of the Brazilian FA, who announced that Ronaldinho was being picked. He's not there on merit, and that's Dunga's big thing.
And he's captain as well, isn't he?
Yeah, yes, and some people, even the great Tostão, who's Brazil's best football writer, are saying, look, Ronaldinho is there to please the sponsors more than anything else. Although obviously, if Brazil do recuperate him and get him back, that's a fabulous thing for football. But he's not looking anywhere near fully fit. Very little interchange up front because they're playing him more up front, a little bit wider left, but more up front, along with Alexandre Pato, who was left a little bit isolated. Very pleased to see the goal scorer though, Hernandez, who I think has a big future. The kind of passing midfielder that Brazil have been lacking. 2-footed, scored a terrific goal with his left, which is not his natural foot. I still worry a little bit about the midfield. They leave the flanks free, the corridors free for the attacking fullbacks, and sometimes I think they lack angles for diagonal passes through the midfield. So a little bit laboured. Argentina, I didn't see their game unfortunately, but the Argentinian press paying a lot of tribute to Ivory Coast, and an important thing coming out of the Argentina team, they've got Riquelme and Messi there together. The coach Batista wants them to work close together. There was
Messi scored and he made one goal as well.
That's right. Well, he's obviously an absolutely fantastic player, and the goal that won it, a little bit reminiscent of Maradona and Caniggia, a goal that they scored against Nigeria in the '94 World Cup, which was Maradona's last game in an Argentina shirt. But there was some talk a couple of months ago, about Riquelme and Messi not really getting on, being from different generations, and that was a worry for Argentina. And everything in the Argentina camp is now being run on the lines of, let's try and show that Riquelme and Messi are really bosom buddies despite their age difference. Okay, they've both got narrow late wins, but that's 3 points in the bag. Brazil will now face New Zealand and China. So Brazil, with that one win, will think they're very close to the quarterfinals already. Argentina, their group perhaps a little bit more difficult with Australia and Serbia, but again, another win should be enough to get them into the quarterfinals, and then the thing does get serious.
And Andy, anybody in Holland that Mr. Wenger should be keeping his eye on?
To be honest, I think you can sleep easy until Wednesday, Cleo. I think Twente have got absolutely no chance, to be perfectly honest. McLaren's already admitted it was pretty much a nightmare draw for him. He's already said, I'm looking medium to long term, it's not all about this match. But if you think how much Twente put into getting into the Champions League qualifiers in the first place, it's always difficult for a club of that size, because you have a terrific season to get there, and of course as soon as you do, bigger clubs spot your best players, steal them, and you've got very little chance of actually qualifying for the competition proper. A problem that Toulouse had in France last season. And their best player, Orlando Engelart, has already left. He's gone to Schalke in Germany, which is also where Fred Rutten, the coach, who did so well to get them there, has gone. Their top scorer, Blaise Kufo, he scored a lot of goals in the Eredivisie, but he's not quite fit. He's still suffering from the injury that kept him out of Switzerland's European Championship campaign. They do have a couple of interesting signings, a couple of young players. They've got Slobodan Rakovic, who Chelsea fans may remember. He's a Serbian teenager who was signed, went on loan to PSV Eindhoven, played some games last season. They've also got Luke Wiltshire, Australian international, who a midfield player who used to play for Middlesbrough and Bristol City, amongst others, in the UK. But it's pretty low key, and to be honest, I don't see much of a chance for them. Of course, as McLaren said, he's looking to build something, and that's obviously what the appointment's aimed at.
Okay.
They're not guaranteed to get through this, and they always knew they might get a difficult draw, but they're trying to capitalise on the momentum they've gained from that by such a high-profile coaching appointment, I guess.
Andy, you don't realise, but there's the Olympics going on, and we can't spend all night talking about football. But thanks a lot for that, and thanks for that, Cleo. And one for you to stew on just for a moment, Billy, from Robert in Scotland. Could you ask Billy if he's willing to take a pay cut to take over at an SPL club outside the old firm, also known as Hibernian? We'll come back. We'll come back to your answer in a moment.
Yeah, thank you.
We like the laugh, though.
One place, all the stories. This is the Olympic Station.
5 Live.
Of course, we've got Tim Vickery, the Legendinho, here in the studio, alongside Hiral Bat, who's our African football expert. We've got Andy Brassel, the top brass in Lyon, to take your questions and comments in European football. And also our special guest star for this hour is Billy Davis, former manager to Derby County, amongst others as well. Lots of texts for you, Billy. But what everybody really wants to know is if you take a pay cut to go manage Hibernian.
Well, let me say, first of all, I think Hibernian's a fantastic football club, and what I would say to the Hibs fans, what I would say to the Hibs fans is get behind the manager that's in place at the moment. It's a very difficult job, and of course at the moment, managers are going through a tough times in their clubs because of the expectation, and also because of the interference and outside influences that come into the game.
Sure. Another one, very similar, from Glenn in Dewsbury. Would Billy ever take over the reins at Ibrox if given the chance?
Well, same again. I would, it's a difficult question when there's managers in place. I don't like to talk about positions that are not available. The managers in place at Rangers, he done a wonderful job last season, and I'm sure that they'll be looking towards this season and going to try and win this league again.
But when is it okay to talk about what you'd like to do, which teams you'd like to manage, Billy?
Well, when somebody offers you a job or when somebody shows interest in speaking to you, I think then you can talk about the possibility. But when there's managers in place, I don't think it's appropriate to talk about that club or the potential of taking over at that club. Only when a vacancy is there, only when somebody shows interest, I think then you can start to discuss the possibility of looking at that club and seeing if something can be done for the future.
But managers find it okay to talk about players that they want to take from other clubs, even when those players are signed to the other clubs. You know, it's a bit confusing for those of us who are outside the spectrum of management. I presume you all know each other. Why is it okay to talk about, well, I wouldn't mind that player coming to my club? A lot of people have been asking this morning about subjects like that, about Gareth Barry, for one thing, going to Liverpool or not going to Liverpool, as the case may be, from Aston Villa.
Well, as I said earlier, the speculation is the thing that's come into football greatly now, and you know, with the agents and with the media attention and everything else, then you're having to deal with lots and lots of speculation, and that's what basically starts the ball rolling or creates the monster. But certainly I don't think would ever come from the managers in discussion or the clubs in discussion. But you know, once it gets to the agents or gets to the press or whatever, then anything's possible, and then the manager's got to start discussing the possibility of that transfer deal.
Yeah, Billy, I'd love to ask you about Benny Feilhaber, who was actually born in Rio, which is my adopted city, and I saw him play for the States just over a year ago in the Copa America in Venezuela, and I was very impressed with his passing. I know you worked with him last season. I'd love to know what you think about him.
Well, let me say to you, I think we brought Benny Feilhaber to Derby County as a project, if you like. You know, a young player that was making great progress in America, still had one or two flaws in his game, but I felt with 4 years of experience, just bringing him in and out of the team and just let him gently settle into the British style of game, I felt that this young player had certainly ability and a very good bit of vision and passing ability, as you said, to go and do something. But he's young, he's progressing very well, and I do think if he continues to listen to the people round about him, then he certainly could have a big future in the game.
Well, the fascinating thing from that answer, I thought, was the 3 or 4 years, the time scale. You see how hard it can be from players coming in from another culture, even English-speaking players, like in the case of Benny. And Billy's there talking 3 or 4 years for an established international, a fellow who's playing for his international side, to be groomed. That really is a long-term process. So I thought that was very interesting.
Lots of calls for you, Billy. There's a lot of love for you out there from these texts, by the way. But we'll come to the calls in just a second. Let me take Gary in Belfast, who's been waiting a while. Gary, good morning. Hello, Gary in Belfast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
A pleasure. You've got a question for Andy?
Yeah, a couple of questions for Andy. I know Ligue 1 starts tonight, and I was just wondering what your thoughts are ahead of the season, who to look out for, maybe a few dark horses and some good signings.
Andy?
There is a feeling that it could be the most open.
Oh, we just lost Andy Brassel for a moment. Gary, stay there. Hopefully we'll get him back in just a moment or two and get the answer that you want on that. Let's go to another call. Imran in Leeds, you've got a question for Billy Davies, yeah?
Yeah, good morning, Dotun. Yeah, good morning, Billy. Yeah, Billy, what I wanted to ask you was that if you had the opportunity again, in managing the Premiership or bringing a club up from the Championship, would you have a better scouting network in looking for players at South America, in Spain and places like that? Because the gulf between playing in Championship and Premiership is massive, and you need players who've got that little bit of quality on the ball. And would you look at that and do things slightly differently?
Well, unfortunately, the answer to your question is yes, because don't forget, Derby County were looking at a 3-year plan, and unfortunately for me, we got promotion after 11 months. We didn't have any European scouts. We did not have the structures in place to handle the Premier League, and what was needed then was a time scale to go and put things in place and to gently, slowly move things along to Premier Division level. But in football we know that the time scales are not always possible, but with the changeovers of clubs and the ownerships and things like that, it can be very difficult. But there's no doubt that Derby County and the structures within Derby County at that point were very, very much far from Premier Division level, and it needed time to go and put everything in place and sort it out.
Thanks very much for the call, Imran. Let's speak to Steve in Doncaster. He's got a question for you as well, Billy.
Hi, Billy. Good morning, Dotun, as well.
Hi, mate.
Good morning.
Hi, I'd like to know what your feelings are on Kenny Jackett. Basically, I live in South Yorkshire, but I'm a Millwall supporter. Is Kenny Jackett the right guy for us? Could he be the first managerial casualty of the year?
Oh, that's a very, very tricky question, because, again, Obviously, I'm going to defend the managers as much as I possibly can. I think they should get support from the fans and the people at the club. We should give them time to go and stamp their own authority in the club and get behind them. And if they get that opportunity, then I'm sure they'll turn out to be an excellent manager.
Steve, thanks very much. Hira, you should come back on that?
Well, I was perhaps going to bring up a quick point on that Liga question, actually, if Andy's still not with us.
Is Andy with us yet? No, we'll try and get him back. No, so, Gary in Belfast, do you want to ask that question again of Hiral, because he seems to know it? Gary?
Yeah, just wondering what your thoughts are on Liga this season, what teams to look out for, maybe any dark horses and any good transfers you think have been completed in the post-season?
Well, I think Liga is always I find one of the best leagues to watch, not just because of the sort of prevalence of African players, but because I think to a certain extent there's this interest in seeing the youth players that come through it, because they've got a brilliant sort of filtration process. The youth players that come through France, often make it up to the very highest level of world football. And I think Lyon have really stepped up this year in trying to keep that position of theirs, and it's difficult to look past them, really, because I think that the big challengers you'd think would be clubs like Marseille, PSG, and Marseille always buy a lot of players. I mean, they've bought Vickery Kone, Nice, a very interesting signing. A guy who looks like he has a future as one of the starters for the Ivory Coast, perhaps alongside Didier Drogba in the near future. But Lyon, they've gone ahead and bought a lot of players themselves, and you just feel sometimes that Marseille just don't have that X factor to sort of help them compete with Lyon. And I mean, from the point of view of transfers, John Mensah and John Makoun coming to Lyon, two African players who've been touted as real stars of the future, linked with a lot of other clubs as well. Just goes to show you that it's going to be tough for anyone to stop Lyon, because they're still spending money on those quality players.
Thanks very much for the call. Appreciate that, Gary. Hopefully that has answered your question. Billy, I know that we're going to lose you in a second or two. Now, I wanted to ask this of everybody, actually. From Faisal in Oldham, who's going to win gold at the Olympics and why? Billy?
Oh, I think you've for me, it's a very difficult question. I haven't seen a great deal of the preparation work, and I don't know enough about it to give you any direct question with regards to that.
That's an honest answer, but I'm going to ask all the other pundits around the table, and then you can come back and add your penny's worth if you still want it, Billy. Yes. Hold on a second. Tim, who's going to win the Olympic gold and why?
Well, I think Brazil will want it just that little bit more than Argentina. Argentina won it 4 years ago. Brazil have got their backs to the wall. Dunga's job, the coach, it could well be dependent on winning this Olympics. And come the big finals recently, Brazil have had the kind of eagle eye on Argentina. So if I have to name one at this stage, I'll go for Brazil.
Hiral Bat from our African correspondent, who's going to win the Olympic gold and why?
I think I'll go with Nigeria having a good chance. And I think the reason I say that is because, especially at a youth level, Nigeria have gone down a very interesting route. They've got players now who are just unbelievable athletes, and they've moved away from sort of more of the extravagance and flair, and sort of tried to focus on just that solid, solid style of play, having a strong defense, good organization, a bit of a legacy of the Yemi Teller reign at the under-17 level when they won the World Championship. And I think that sort of thing does win trophies these days. So I think Nigeria could have a good chance, especially seeing as they've already held the favourites.
A similar question from Alex. Who will light up the Olympic football scene at this year's Games? You can stick to your same answers if you want.
Well, Leo Messi is the best player there. I think he's fantastic, absolutely breathtakingly fantastic. Well, I talked earlier on about Hernanes of Brazil. I think he's got a good future with them. Up front for Brazil, Alexandre Pato didn't have a very good debut game. Joe will be putting pressure on him. It'll be interesting to see who comes through, because the South Americans, as I say, they take this very seriously indeed.
Hero?
I think from the point of view of flair, it'd be a good idea to keep an eye on Gervinho. That's Gervais Yao Kouassi of Ivory Coast, and
the Argentinians were very impressed with him. Really impressed with him.
I mean, the pace that he has is quite extraordinary, and he's been great all year in Ligue 1, and he's looking like the next big winger. I think he's got all the talent to do something really special, especially since he's got goals in him as well. I think if he develops that more, I mean, there's no end to what he could do.
Billy, before you go, and I have had 2 or 3 text messages on this, and I can understand if you don't want to answer this one, but nevertheless, people asking what your opinion on the Gareth Barry situation is.
Well, I think obviously when the player makes it clear that he wants to move from a football club, it becomes very, very difficult. And if you believe what you're reading, then it seems as though Gareth Barry wants to go and wants to leave Aston Villa. And once that happens, I think it's very, very difficult. It's only a matter of time. So, I would expect over the course of the next few weeks, if you believe what you read, that Gareth Barry does want to leave and he does want to join the interested club, then I would expect that there would be a deal concluded very, very shortly.
How would that make you feel as a manager then?
Well, obviously the buying club would be delighted, obviously, but I'm sure that Martin O'Neill and his staff will know that if they get the right money for that player who's given Villa great service, then they can go and spend wisely.
Absolutely. Billy Davies, thanks very much. We'll continue the football phone-in straight after the 5 Live News and Sport. This is Up All Night's World Football Phone-in special. We're talking tonight, between now and 5, football in Europe, in Africa, in Australia and Asia, in America, North and South. Our guest in the studio with me, Tim Vickery, the Legendinho, and also, I was just thinking of your world football name. I do apologise. Hiral Batch, who's our African football expert as well. You don't have a world football name yet.
Well, I think that Uxbridge Massive seems to have
Uxbridge Massive
over the last
few right. Let's stick to the Uxbridge Massive. We've got the Uxbridge Massive in the studio as well, and we're all now joined by the ex-Sheffield United, Everton, Blackburn and Derby County defender Craig Short. Craig, good morning.
Good morning.
I hear that you're on hand to answer any questions that our listeners might have about any of your former teammates, including Lorenzo Amoruso.
Yes, Lorenzo I think he's now running a restaurant back in Florence. So I played with Lorenzo for just 1 season at Blackburn.
He's still a legend, though, isn't
he? I didn't realise how big a star he was at Rangers. I think he was probably at the club there when the most successful time there in their history, and he was a big favourite there. But things didn't work out for him at Blackburn because of injury, really.
You're a favourite of many of our listeners as well. So any text or phone calls or emails to Craig Short, please, particularly from Sheffield United, Everton, Blackburn and Derby County fans, but generally as well. It's Europe, America, North and South, Australia, Asia and, of course, Africa. And with us for this hour of the programme is Craig Short as well. We've already introduced him, as you know. Oh, we've got Andy Brassel back as well. I'll talk to Andy in a moment or two. Craig Short, ex-Sheffield United, Everton, Blackburn and Derby County defender as well. Andy Brassel, you're going to have to sit on the bench for a moment or two because, the game's on. You can't just get on the game without the ref giving you the fourth official giving you the time to come on. Yeah, you're in the sin bin. That's right.
He's in the toilet. He's in the
toilet. We'll find out what he's been doing since he's been gone. Anyway, this for you, Craig. Patrick has sent a text saying, I have a photo as an 8-year-old with you when you played for Scarborough. How does time there rate with the rest of your career?
I've got a lot of fond memories of Scarborough, but it's a time that's sad now what's happened to the club, because the club was the first club to get out of the conference all those years ago in about 87, 88. And they had a couple of giant-killing acts in that over the years, beat Chelsea in the Milk Cup, I think it was. Had some good cup runs, and then maintained the league status for a lot of years. And then now they've gone bankrupt, and we don't hear of Scarborough anymore. They're not even in the conference. They've slipped down into oblivion in some of the local leagues in North Yorkshire, which is sad because Neil Warnock did a great job there. And the first year they got promoted, they stayed semi-professional and finished 12th, which was a major feat, really, when all the other teams were fully professional. But I had a lot of fun memories there. I never ever thought I'd go any further than 4th Division and Scarborough Football Club.
Chris has sent an email, Chris in Lee, saying any hard feelings for elbowing Ronald Koeman?
That was in the UEFA Cup game, wasn't it, in Rotterdam? Disappointed in his reaction. He'd gone right over the top of me and actually Peter Johnson, the Everton chairman, wanted to photograph my shin afterwards because he split my shin pad. And it was just reaction. I lashed out. I hardly caught him with any contact, but unsurprisingly, some of these players do overreact, and I got sent off. But the funny thing about that evening was, it was the 90th minute, and as I was walking to find my exit, the tunnel was built into the ground, and it was like a lifting mechanism. So I couldn't even find my way off the ground when I was sent off, and Joe Royal had to point me towards towards where I was meant to be going, and this sort of platform lifted out of the ground and swallowed me up, and I disappeared down the tunnel. It wasn't a great night for me. We lost as well, 1-0 on aggregate.
So tu ne regrettes rien?
I regret for getting sent off, but I was disappointed with his reaction.
Et vous, Andy Brassel, tu regrettes quelque chose, peut-être?
The quality of my phone line.
Merci. Let's stick to English for the next 2.75 hours anyway. 0500 909 693. Graham in Bolton, good morning.
Good morning, Don.
Hiya, mate.
My question is for Tim this morning.
Go ahead, yeah.
There's the ground La Bombonera. Where does it get its name from?
It means this is the stadium, the famous stadium of Boca Juniors in Buenos Aires, and it's called La Bombonera, which means chocolate box, because it's a very tight space there in the cramped working-class streets of La Boca, which is the mouth there, the River Plate, the kind of Docklands region there of Buenos Aires. And the stadium just goes straight up. It's really not one for vertigo sufferers. It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere, but because it goes straight up, it's like having one layer on top of another layer. The name that it's been given is the chocolate box, La Bombonera. And for anyone visiting Argentina later this year, it's going to be closed for a fair amount of time. They're going to do some work for it. In the long term, this is terrific news, because they were thinking of having to move their stadium somewhere else, which would have been an absolute tragedy. Boca Juniors go hand in hand with that very colourful neighbourhood, La Boca. They've decided they're going to stay, and they're going to extend their stadium, increase the capacity, which I think is good news. And I would ask anyone, I would advise anyone, if you're in Buenos Aires, go and see Boca Juniors at La Bombonera, because it's fantastic. Can I ask Craig a question, Dotun?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Craig.
Hi.
One thing which I've noted with South American centre-backs coming over to British football is quite often they've struggled. I'm just thinking about this at the moment because Newcastle have signed Coloccini of Argentina, who is a rugged player. Perhaps he's going to give referees a bit of trouble, but his lack of pace might be exposed a little bit. I'm thinking of other South American centre-backs. Rocky Jr., the Brazilian, he's won a World Cup medal, but he looked all over the place at Leeds. Rafael Scheidt, I'm never allowed to forget him. I thought he'd be a good buy for Celtic. He was an absolute disaster. Gabriel Paletta of Liverpool had a very, very difficult time. And one of the things I've often wondered is that the English clubs, perhaps, or the British clubs, tend to defend a little bit higher up the field than the South Americans are used to, and the centre-backs perhaps not so comfortable defending in this position. As a distinguished former centre-back yourself, I'd love to get your thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I wish in a way I never ever got a chance to play abroad, but I realised watching some foreign football that you do tend to defend deeper, and to the central midfield players more or less are defensive, and you've got this protective screen in front of you. I think nowadays Premier League teams have taken more of an attitude where they have a defensive midfielder, and I can remember most of my playing career, the two midfielders were meant to get forward, and you didn't have that screen in front of you. And I do think a lot of the centre-halves who have come from foreign shores do find it difficult to open, because we are told to squeeze up high up the line, a lot of spacing behind you. And that's why I found sometimes the Championship more difficult to play in as a centre-half, because the game was so direct. If you had when I was playing, say, against Chelsea, the fullback at Chelsea would get the ball, and he would pass it inside to sort of John Terry and keep the ball, so you could just adjust in position all the time. Whereas you play in the Championship, sometimes it was direct, and as soon as the ball got to a fullback, I don't know, say a Watford player, or I'm not picking them out as being a long ball team, but the ball would be going behind you, and you would have a chase on with the centre forward. It was a very, very physical game in the Championship, and I think it does surprise some of these foreign centre halves how physical and direct the game is in this country.
0500 909 693. Words of Craig Short there, ex-Sheffield United, Everton, Blackburn and Derby County defender. If you'd like to speak to him, a couple of texts for you, which I'll read out in a second or two, Craig. But first, let's introduce one of our other special guests for tonight. We're going live to Salt Lake City with the good doctor himself, Kenny Duca. Kenny, good to speak to you again. We haven't spoken to you for a while. What's been happening at Real Salt Lake?
Well, I think we're getting on with the stadium development off the field, but on the field we've been doing pretty well. We're actually sitting top of the Western Conference at the moment, and that's the first time in Real Salt Lake's history, so things things are going well on the park as well, and hopefully we're pushing for playoffs come the end of the season.
So you're not missing Scottish football then at all?
I'm not missing the weather that we play football in Scotland, so it's quite hot here, but it's great to play soccer in this kind of weather, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, so not missing it too much at the moment.
Is the football up to the standard that you were playing back home?
I think it's probably similar to the Premier League in Scotland, although it's quite a different style. They like to keep the ball on the deck a lot more over here. They do have a lot of good athletes, but it is a bit of a slower game because of the heat. They need to keep the ball a lot more. Maybe we play more direct back home in Scotland, and that maybe doesn't suit me as much over here, but they're not used to playing against players like me, so that's helped me as well.
Hang on a second, David Beckham's used to playing against players like you?
Well, I suppose, but we've only played them once and they didn't handle us very well, so we did okay against Beckham's lot, but no, I'm looking forward to going down there and playing the Galaxy in a couple of months at time as well, and putting myself up against him again.
Yeah, well, you get to dribble him once or twice, I suppose. What's the fan base like for Real Salt Lake?
Well, we get about an average crowd of between 14 and 15,000 every game. We've had up to 25,000, obviously, for the Galaxy game. But when we open the soccer-specific stadium, it's going to have a capacity of around about 20,000, and we'd be disappointed if we don't fill that towards the end of the season, in particular for pushing for the playoff spots. So,
Kenny Duke is with us for another few minutes. If you'd like to speak to him, pick up the phone and give him a call on 0500 909 693. One or two Gretna fans might want to do that as well. But first of all, let's go to Andrew in Blackheath, the gent. We've been waiting for your call, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Dalton, and good morning all the other experts there.
Morning.
Dalton, first of all, I need to speak to you.
Oh, okay.
Then a question to Tim about a Colombian player, and then finally a general comment, and I'd like the experts to give their opinion on the football tournament at the Olympics. Now, first of all, Dalton, you have got some potentially worrying news, but I was wondering long and hard whether I should tell you, because I don't want to upset you, although I know that you're now a real macho man, because on air you promised that you would never ever read another sloppy romantic novel. So you're the kind of supporter we need at the Valley, right?
Why do you have to remind me of this every single time?
On the other hand, I know you're going on holiday.
Yes.
And I don't want you to have sleepless nights, so that, tossing and turning at night, so that your charming hair indoors might eventually have to say, "What's the matter, darling? Is it something I've said or words to that effect?" But, if you're ready, I'll give you the potentially worrying news. Are you ready for it?
I am. Only if you don't do any more impersonations of me and my missus behind closed doors.
I promise not to. This is a one-off.
Okay.
Now, I've been reading the local press quite frequently.
Oh, do you mean down in that South American enclave of South London?
97, where the team we both love to support play at the Valley, CAFC, that they are supposed to be in trouble, that the credit crunch has reached them, and that Pardew is having to sell all the best players to keep the club's head above water. So I got quite worried, because I've worked out in the last 2 years since relegation, they've had each season 11 million what they call parachute payments. They've got 17 million for Darren Dent, 4 million for Andy Reid, about 8 million a season in ticket sales and so on. That's about 60 million. Where's it all gone? So I've written a letter to Mr. Chappell, the new chairman, pointing this out and asking, could he please give me a breakdown why they're in such trouble? And I await his reply. And as soon as I know, I'll let you know when you get back from holiday, Doctor.
Please do. And, coincidentally, Andrew, as you called us, just the same second, we had a text from Dale who says, I haven't heard the gent yet, Dotun. I bet he's forgot the early kick-off. Of course not. Gent, you've got a question for Tim as well, I know. Go ahead.
The phone wasn't working properly at your end.
Oh, I see. But good to have you back on. Is there a question for Tim?
So that's another fan I've got. Great. Now, if I can ask Tim, but then ask a general question about the Olympics.
Please, yeah.
Tim, I've been reading a little comment by a famous ex-Colombian player called Carlos Valderrama, the one with the Don King hair, but better than Don King's hair, sticking up all over the place. And he's saying that there's a Colombian midfielder with the name of Magnelli Torres, who hasn't come to Europe, funnily enough, but has gone to a Chilean team called Colo-Colo. Well, if he's so good, why hasn't he come to Europe? Do you know anything about him?
Yes, and he came through the under-20 ranks and has just had 2 terrific seasons in the Copa Libertadores for a small side for Colombia who did remarkably well, especially last year in the Libertadores, Cúcuta. Magnelli Torres is a kind of old-fashioned number 10 who sees the pass wonderfully well. And if you're a striker, and if you've got a bit of pace about you, you're going to love playing with Magnelli Torres, because he dinks that ball behind the defence. He has the vision to see the pass and the technical ability to then execute the pass. He's a very interesting talent who is really blooming now. Colo-Colo in Chile, he's just moved there, and they're a side who play attacking football. That could be a nice little halfway house for him to then go on to Europe. And he will struggle, I think, with the extra pace of European football, and his space will be squeezed a little bit more. It'll be harder for him to find the space from which to make those passes.
Have a couple of seasons in Chile and then come over to Europe.
Perhaps. He's only got 24. He's playing in for the Colombian national team, either as a starter or more recently coming off the bench. And he's a lovely player to watch. He's the kind of player you want to succeed, because he brings talent to the game. And just quickly, while we're on the subject of Colombians, I think it was Les last week who asked me about a supposed Colombian, Omar Carmona, who'd gone from Portsmouth to Norwich. I'd never heard of him, but I checked him out, and his real name is Omar Krumah, and he's from Gambia, so I accept no responsibility for this guy from Gambia. What was your general point, Andrew?
Right. The general point, Tim, I'd like your opinion and the other experts. Actually, I did watch the whole of the Argentina-Ivory Coast game, and what came to mind is this, that the really top teams like Argentina and Brazil are allowed to have 3 overage players. Who did Argentina have? One of the best holding midfielders, Mascherano, one of the best providers, in Riquelme. They also had Messi, who is under 23. Ronaldinho in Brazil. Now, the other teams like New Zealand, Australia, Japan, China and so on, they haven't got any world-class stars over 23. So I think it's unfair to allow teams to have 3 overage players, just limited to under 23. What do you think?
I don't even think it can be limited to under 23 anymore. I think the decision that we had in midweek from the arbitration service in Switzerland, saying that there is no obligation to release players even who are under 23. I think that holds the Olympic football tournament below the waterline now, because why should any European club now release? And it's not as if they get anything back from it. From the World Cup, they get plenty back. And the World Cup is a big trade show for football, and also player transfer values rise substantially afterwards. So the clubs really get something back from it. From the Olympic football tournaments, I don't think they get anything back at all. And I think now, after that decision, we've reached a position where, as it currently stands, the Olympic tournament is not viable, because in the future clubs will not release. So for my mind, for London 2012, I think to be viable, it's going to have to go down to an under-20, under-19 tournament. What do you reckon here, Al?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fair point, isn't it? Why would any club want to lose their players for 2-3 weeks and face that dreaded injury risk, which can scupper a challenge? I mean, just envisage this situation. Lionel Messi goes into the final and gets breaks his leg or something. I mean, what happens to Barcelona, especially if Samuel Eto'o leaves? I mean, it's something which is very difficult to sort of take if you're a manager, and I don't really see why
Yellow card for a gratuitous mention.
I know. It came. I was tempted, but I'm going to let him off. Let me just give you a warning, son. You know, don't push your luck. You get me?
No more of those high tackles. No. Yeah. No, I think so. I think with that in mind, what Tim says, I think, is absolutely correct. It's difficult to see the Olympic football tournament sort of, growing. If anything, it may regress. I mean, but at the same time, we've got so much youth football and youth tournaments being played around the world that, I mean, Olympic football, whether it's necessary or not, it's hard to say, really.